Stephen Glagow is with AET Tolls, and we'll be talking about increasing commuter diversity and local support. Stephen, please share your screen and take yourself off mute.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And thank you, Robert and Shannon and Cheryl, of course, as well. Shannon talked about the personas. Robert has talked about best practices and how to approach the customer. Today, I'm going to switch a little bit around and talk a little bit how those customer-driven requirements are being implemented with a new technology over at NTTA. So it's a new approach to payment that the North Texas Toll Association has implemented. So this is more of a case study. We will talk about some of the market research that was done, a little bit about those personas, but let's see how they address it. Billions of dollars are spent on collection from violators, those people that elect to do toll by plate, or in the case of NTTA, zip cash. There are, of course, a percentage of users that are impossible to collect from. So there's a lot of yearly write-offs. That's part of that leakage. So I want to start with my first question, if that's okay. What do you think the industry average leakage is? We heard some presenters from the IBTTA just a few days ago talk about leakage. But we can see that, within your organizations, within the consulting community, between 10 and 20%. It was interesting because the Pennsylvania Turnpike, in their discussion the other day, said that it's 50%. So it's quite dramatic. Now, of course, you know what it's like within your own agencies. NTTA has their particular statistics, but of course, we all want to make sure that we eliminate as much of the leakage as possible. But it's very hard to track those violators, those folks that go through, even though you may be capturing them on OCR. And that's not because they don't want to pay. It's actually because they've changed address, their vehicle is hard to track. And of course, with today's environment, we need a simple cashless solution. People don't want to deal with cash anymore. We don't know when COVID's going away. We're all hoping that a vaccine will be available by the end of the year, and that would be great. But by the time it's implemented, it's going to be quite some time before we're able to really live our lives the way we used to. And handling cash is a way to transmit the virus. So we need to get away from that.
Would you like to share the results?
I'm sorry?
I didn't share the results. Do you want to share the results?
Yeah, please go ahead and share the results, Cheryl. Thank you. Let's take a look. Between 10 and 20% out there. That still is a heck of a lot of leakage. All right, great. Let's go ahead and move on. So now we take a look at the persona that NTTA wanted to take a look at, especially for the violators. We know what the tag users are, and of course we need to be able to market to them. And as Shannon talked about the different profiles of the users, and as Robert talked about the best practices to approach those users, what NTTA wanted to concentrate on was those folks that don't have a tag, those infrequent and untagged toll users that are out there. The different socioeconomic classes that they come from, whether or not it's rural and urban. They also saw a large percentage of the population were underbanked. We know that 26% of Americans don't have credit cards, but there's about 25 to 28% of people that don't even have a bank account. So that is pretty traumatic when you're trying to get them to switch over to tag, and you're also trying to get them to pay. So what they wanted to do was put something in place that made it very simple and easy for someone to utilize the technology that they have. And I think Robert talked about the technology and how much technology is being used by all of us out there in the marketplace. But utilize the technology, whether it's a smartphone or a regular phone, and allow people to pay directly from their phone after they've received their invoice on their phone. They also thought about the environment of that, and they said it's tough with what they called app issues or people getting app fatigue. So they elected to implement what's called an SMS-based or text-based registration environment, and I'll discuss that in just a moment with you, and we'll see how that works. But they want to also make it simple to pay. So they've elected to now allow people to pay their invoice when they're using the roads onto their telephone bill. And the reason for that is because 98% of consumers have cell phones. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions here. The first question is, what percentage of your customer base is tag versus cash? Let's go ahead and put that up, Cheryl, if you don't mind. You know, it differs in each one of the agencies. You know, typical industry is, you know, we're going to find out in just a second what you believe typical industry is. But, you know, it does vary quite a bit by agency. You know, right now we see that 80-20 is winning, and that's pretty much what we've seen out there in the market as well. It's about 20% to 25% are untagged. So a good embedding of tags out there, but still a good large amount of population and amount of revenue that has to be collected in alternative methods. So with that, I also want to ask you another question, because this is the important question of the day for that 98% of consumers that have cell phones. And that is, when was the last time you changed your phone number? So if we could put that poll up real quick, please. Thank you. Now, the reason we ask that is because the phone company always knows where to get you. You always pay your phone bills. What you don't want to do is lose your phone number. That's a part of you. It's what people know and people recognize with you. It's been that way for quite some time. For me, I've had my phone number for many, many years, as is most of the people in the office that I work with. And pretty much based on the survey today, you know, most of you have had your phone for, you know, most of your life, right? Your number for lots and lots of your life. And that's part of the association that NTTA wanted to do. They wanted to allow people to pay on their phone bill, and they know that the collection is always going to happen, because the last thing people want to do is lose their phone. And so therefore, in the results of what we're doing so far, we're seeing zero leakage for those people that approve on their phone bill. Now we'll talk about that more in just a second as we take a look in terms of how they implemented it. Let me move on. So the way that it's done is the mobile number, of course, is linked to the customer. Then that customer's mobile number is linked to the license plate, customer license plate. In their case, they're using their AVI, the video, or the OCR to capture the license plate as it goes through the gantries. The customer total information, the cash price, is then sent out to the tapNpay collection process. Once that's verified with the customer, and when you're dealing with the phone company and doing what's called direct carrier billing, you need to have multiple points of verification. And that really helps also with the leakage. Because what happens is at the end of every day, the end user gets a text saying you've gone through these tolls within North Texas today. Please go visit the website and just verify that you actually went through those tolls. And once they verify that, that information is then sent out to the carrier. Now, in their particular case, not all users want to associate with their carrier. They may want to do it through a PSP, a payment service provider, or have it put onto their credit card, debit card, so on and so forth. So there's options available to people. But once that information is then sent out to the end user, the invoice is then sent out to them through their PSP or through their carrier, and the revenue is collected and distributed. So hopefully that's very clear. I will give you a site to go to at the end of this discussion that you can go and take a look at some of the examples of how they're doing it. So it's their site, tapnpay.info, that takes the customer through the process. So let me take you through some of the challenges. We talked about those personas. We talked about the best practices to approach those. But we found out that it doesn't really matter what the driver's persona is. It's being able to reach them that's paramount. And I think Robert and Shannon both gave examples of what it's going to take to understand those personas so well that you could target them properly. But there's also some issues internally within your own organization. Because remember, the tag people are given metrics to convert drivers to tag. But you can't have them compete internally when you're trying to also get people to pay their bills for or their violators or their fines, and you're trying to give them another alternate way of doing it. You may never be able to convert some of those folks, and then you may be able to convert those folks. But internal marketing and ownership need to be clearly defined, and metrics in place that are complementary to each one of the marketing groups within the organization. You need to eliminate that conflict internally so that you have that shared ownership and success. That messaging has to be very simple, but again, as Shannon and Jeffrey talked about, it has to be, Shannon and Robert talked about, you have to have that direct, simple messaging to those personas that you're trying to attract. Also, we found that retaining the ownership of the drivers is quite important. That way, when you see a violator or a toll-by-plate user building up and using a lot of the toll roads, you may want to then turn that over to the tag team to go ahead and try to recruit that person over to get them to be tag users. And as you know, if there's 20 or 22 or 25% of your usage that's taking place by toll-by-plate or through ABI, then you have a lot of drivers that you can potentially convert. Now, you're always going to get a combination of the both because there's always new drivers coming and people moving, so on and so forth. But we talked about research, and one of the questions was market research using persona to hone messaging. It's very important that you're doing focus groups, that you're doing some statistically significant data collection out to the community. You may do that through market research agencies. You may do that through your own people internally. But I think Shannon and Robert talked about that to some degree. And if we have time, we can talk in more detail after the presentations as well. All right, so what NTTA did was they recognized that they have to touch those users. And so the users that are currently using what's called zip cash, which are the people that are doing the toll-by-plate, when they come to the site, they're saying to them, no more zip cash bills, please convert over to tapNpay. This helps them eliminate those millions and millions of dollars that are being spent, that you're spending today on trying to collect, especially on the invoices. Now, what they also do is at their cashier stations, so they, of course, have payment agencies. They also have collateral. Of course, as most of you know, that in Texas, we're bilingual. We speak English, we speak Spanish, as in many of the states around the country. So we do have Spanish literature and English literature, again, to let people know that they're able to move over to tapNpay, which gives them a much easier payment method, so they don't have to worry about standing in a queue or a line, especially during COVID. And then on their zip cash bills, when they get those bills, when we are able to find them, in the majority of cases we are, you'll see on the front page, I don't know if you can see that down below, but it says tapNpay is a convenient payment method. Please go ahead and do that. And when they go to their second page for detail, you're going to see that they're also promoting it quite aggressively to try to get people to do that. The way that you get success is giving knowledge to the end user and the consumer. And they found that that's, of course, what you need to do. It just can't be out there for people to find. You really need to promote your alternate forms of payments that you have available. And with that, I think that's a good summary of what NTTA are doing. Again, to learn more about the NTTA project, please go to the tapnpay.info site. That'll give you what the consumer sees. And if you'd like to hear more information about tapNpay, you can always go to our site, tapnpay.co, or contact me directly. And with that, thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Great presentation. In the interest of time, we only have about 12, 13 minutes left. I'm going to just go right ahead and open it up to questions from the audience. You can either do it by chat or, Cheryl, they'll be able to take themselves off mute and ask the question if they want, correct?
Yes, if someone would like to ask a question live. I think that there is a couple of questions, though, there for Steve.
I see a couple here. I see one that says, when will other mobile carriers be integrated? Today, Verizon is the core carrier. AT&T will be coming on shortly with T-Mobile and Sprint's integration. We're probably looking at the beginning of 2021. Now, as you probably, if you do follow it in the marketplace, you saw that Verizon has just picked up Cricket. So even some of the MVNOs, which are the mobile virtual network operators, or some of the lower cost operators, could potentially come on. Some of the issues behind that, though, is the wallet. Some of those are prepay, and what the carriers don't want to do is pull funds out of the prepay that's there for their telephone. So some of them make a wallet available that people can pre-fund that the tolls can be taken from. But I could talk more if you want to send me an individual message on that. The other one is, can the cost of tap and pay be comparable to what the costs are to support tag customers, so that non-tag customers can be charged the same rate as tag customers? So the answer is essentially yes. The carriers do take a larger percentage than what a typical PSP would take. So there's additional cost to that. And the agencies do have a specific amount of revenue that they need to bring in for each one of the tolls. So today, they have a cash price associated with it. If you do have those kind of volumes, you always want to be able to push your customer to tag. It just is more convenient, and it's more, the margins are higher because, of course, tag is prepaid versus tap and pay, which is post-pay.
And
then, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
no, I just wanted to make sure that you or Jeff saw just one more from Tom Kruger. If you scroll up just a little bit.
Okay, sorry about that.
How is the initial link established between the customer and vehicle and the mobile number? Does the customer already need to be a customer?
So the way that it works is that once you go in, it's again through SMS, you're able to send over your license plate number, and then some verification questions will come back. In the case of what NTTA are doing is if you've used the roads, we know who you are, you've received a zip cash bill. So what the options will be is that they can put their zip cash number in, and then it'll associate to the end user with some verification questions. And then they'll be able to pay their invoice as it is, and then they'll register from that point on. If they don't have their zip cash bill, what they can essentially do is put in their license plate number. It then asks some verification questions again, and it depends on how it's associated back. We've got some verification data that we check on to make sure they are who they are, and that vehicle is their vehicle associated with that phone number. And once that's done, they're registered, and every time they go through, we're capturing the license plate information. Was that clear?
Yeah. Our president asked a question, says, Steve, is it better to view this as another form of account ownership versus the leakage challenge, which is really driven by avoidance?
Yeah, I'm going to turn that back around to Samuel. Samuel, what do you think? Samuel, if you want to unmute yourself. Oh, Samuel, or you're still on mute. But I'll take a crack at that.
He may have stepped away.
I'm sorry?
He may have stepped away and didn't hear you.
Okay, very good. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Thanks. You're on mute, Samuel.
There we go. Okay.
So what I was saying is that your question is it better to view this as another form of account ownership versus the leakage challenge, which is really driven by avoidance.
I'm muted now, Steve. So sorry. Thanks,
There you
Cheryl. Yeah, in my experience, folks who want to pay are going to pay, right? So I do believe in multiple channels to allow payment. But the challenge I have with leakage is around those folks who are trying to avoid paying. So,
yeah, those people won't ever register for tap and pay, that's for sure.
Right.
But for those people that are honest and do want to pay and don't want to have potential fines associated with their with the extra costs associated with it, and want that extra time to pay, again, each one of the agencies have their own personas and profiles. But there are a percentage of, there's some of the violators that will actually wait a very long time to pay and pay an additional fine because they don't have the cash available now to actually pay. You know that, Samuel. I think all the other agencies know that as well. But they do want to pay. They don't want that against the record. And what we're doing is, because this is a post-pay opportunity and is associated with their phone bill, we make it a very simple and easy way to at least for them to do that and still have the time it takes to get that payment made. So hopefully that was clear.
No, it helps. It sounds like it's along the lines of what Shannon shared at the beginning, because I'm too a big believer in convenience. You know, make it easy for me, and I don't have a problem paying a premium for that service.
Sure. That's great.
Thank you.
And I think it's also make it easy for you, but also, make it convenient for you, but also make it very easy. Everything that we do in this industry, I always look back and say, can my 75-year-old mom, as Shannon kind of indicated, can she figure it out and do it? Or do I suddenly become her IT department again, trying to get her set up with it? So I think it's convenience and ease for all those generations. So that's great. Let's see. Here's one. I guess this is for you, Steve. How are you handling users without a vehicle?
For those people that want to register. So I think if I had to, I'd say that that may be associated to Uber, Lyft, rental car, so that when you go into an Uber and you want to take a toll road, we are giving them the option of doing what's called a temporary registration for a certain period of time. So that means that if you go into your Uber, you register with that license plate, you do a quick verification of it, you say that you want to do that for the next hour. At the end of your ride, you could take that off, but then you would be responsible for the tolls that that driver has taken. And it's the same thing with rental car. It's that opportunity. If you are coming over from Europe, Middle East, Africa, you are associated with a carrier, and most of the European carriers are associated with this. You're able to come into Florida, as an example, register the rental car vehicle for the week, and then when you get home, you're paying in local currency on your phone bill. So that's just another option that it has. And I think most of the apps that are out there probably are doing some of the same kind of things. But because this is SMS based, it doesn't need an app. It doesn't need a smartphone. It could be any phone whatsoever. And hopefully that's answered the question about if you don't have a vehicle.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. If you guys have a question you want to ask in person, just shoot me a chat message and I'll call on you. Otherwise, feel free to ask questions to all of our panelists via the chat function or I can call on you. Here's one more, Steve. This is from Donovan. Can the cost of tapNpay be comparable to what the costs are to support tag customers, so that non-tag customers can be charged the same rate as a tag customer?
I thought I had addressed that maybe in a different way before, but I think the answer is
okay.
Yes. But there are the additional costs to the carrier that you're paying versus the PSP costs. Okay. And so it makes it a little difficult, and then there's a margin hit that the agency then has to determine whether or not it makes sense. But it may make sense, right?
Right. Shannon, you had a question?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So my question was, what happens if the phone carrier kicks the toll back? Who's responsible for that toll now and the collections? And then also, do you guys guarantee the toll? Does tapNpay guarantee the toll?
Yeah, so the answer is that's very dependent on each one of the agencies. But yes, the toll is always guaranteed after the consumer has accepted it. Now, what's happened is the CSR, the customer service representative at the phone companies, they're called if there's a problem with the bill, and they could deny it. But because there's multiple lines of proof that have happened, remember there's an SMS going to them saying, you've done this transaction, go to the site and verify it. If they verify or they deny it at that point, it then gets kicked back, in the case of NTTA, to a zip cash user, right? So we go through the traditional collection mode. Once they accept it and it goes on to their phone bill, we've got that second level of proof, because then the phone company is sending another text to them, which is a verification text saying you've done this transaction, right? Yes or no. So there's multiple levels of proof along the way. That's why we're seeing zero leakage, zero non-payment coming through that. So there are multiple steps in place. And those were more demanded by the phone companies than anything else. But once it's accepted, it is paid.
Hey, Steve, we only have a minute left. I have one final question that just came across. What does the phone carrier charge to the toll agency for this service?
Those rates vary quite dramatically based on the phone company. So a European agency must maybe a little bit lower. The American agencies are a little bit higher. Give me a call directly and we can talk about it because it's going to be very, very much based on volume.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Well, that appears to be all of the questions, and we are 30 seconds away from the end of our session. So in the interest of time, I'm going to end it.